Hello and welcome. Today we're going to look at some tricks to improve the rendering of your scene, and the most important one being lights, to add lights into your scene and have light effects so that your scene looks more realistic, because the world that surrounds us is full of lights. There's the sunlight, there's the spotlight, fluorescent light, tube lights, LED lights. We're surrounded by lights, especially that our night vision is not that good. And the second thing we're going to look at is how to prepare your scene so that the rendering goes faster. And one of the things that you do is, for example, when you have a light on an object, there is a certain reflection of the light that can be visible, that is visible. And what you do is you do baking, which is you pre-render how the light affects the view of the texture on or the material onto your object, so that when you render, you only need to have the pre-rendered texture with the light effects, and you don't need to have the light in your scene. So that saves a lot of time when you're doing your rendering. It sounds complicated, but once we finish the tutorial, you'll understand that. Okay, so we're going to start with the first part of this tutorial, which is lights. Now what we do, we are going to open the old file that we used in the previous tutorial, which is the one with the Rubik's Cube. So we go to where we've kept it, and here it is. And we can ignore that, we continue. And here's our Rubik's Cube. So we have our initial Rubik's Cube, and as you can see, there's nothing special about it. It is full Rubik's Cube as it's meant to be. Now what we do next is we're gonna add a plan onto which the Rubik's Cube is gonna rest. So what we do is very simple. We go to the create tab, and we choose the geometry options, and we choose a plan, and we just create a plan on our object, and here it is. Now what we do, we make sure we have a color that is a bit dark to give us a better view of what's going to happen. This one, yeah. So now we have a texture, we have our Rubik's Cube resting on the plan, and you can start doing things to that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to add lights. So this time we go to add create tab, but this time we go to lights, and we can see that we have three options. We have photometric light, standard light, and Arnold lights. Arnold lights we're not going to look at. Photometric we're going to look at that to start with. And we have target light, free light, and sun positioner. So we're going to start with the target light. So how you do that, you just click somewhere. You have a first target light, and then you first click, and then you have your second click. So the first click, position where your light is, and the second we click, position where the target is. So when we look at all the viewpoint, we can see that our light is in the back here, so we can move it, because if we do a render of this, render. So it's all dark, it's no good. We need to have something that gives us light that we look at. So we're going to move the light around to have it, so where the light fall is also where we are. So basically we need to move it around towards us. So we put the light here, and like this. And if you do a quick render, and here we have now a better view with the object. So we can do a few things with that. Of course, we can raise the light a bit higher. We can also move the target to be right in the, right into the center of the cube. Yeah. So now when you do a render of this, we have a better view, as you can see here. It's a better light and better setting. Okay, So now we've done that, we can start playing with that and change a few things to it. There's the, when we do the target light, so we keep this render, okay, and we save it. So we're going to call it render 1. So it's again we are in so it's render, so it's example 501, and I will save it. Yeah. Oh, 5M, sorry, 5 format. So we're going to choose a JPEG or PNG. Okay, PNG is fine, and you're going to save. And we use RGB and say okay. Alpha channel transparency, but you need to know about that. Okay, so we have that. Of course, what we need to do before we carry on is to save this as, and we're going to save it as example. Yeah, so it's example 5.1. Right, so we've done that. We have the light. We have the light is there. We can choose the light and we can modify it. So we have the target light here, which we can modify, and there are a few things we can do. We can have the light, it can be on or off, it can be targeted or not. So if you just remove the target. We have the target distance, we can specify it in more precise numbers, but we leave it like that because we did it freehand. We can look at a few other things. So we can look at the color attenuation. So for example here, interestingly, there's a whole, again, sorry, my voice is gone. There's a whole list of different lights that are pre-defined. So there's presets of a lot of lights, halogen, fluorescent, etc., etc. For what we're doing at the moment, we keep it as it is. We can change the shadow area, and we can have different shadows area. So we can go here, for example, in the shadow area, and we can change from point to line, rectangular, cylinder, sphere, etc. And we can do rectangle, for example, and we can make it much smaller. So 1200, so it becomes 120. Sorry, 120 by 60. And we can then render again and see what's the difference. Okay, so we have here the new one, and we have here the previous one. So I don't know if you can see it, but it's a bit sharper in that the edge here is a bit sharper. It can, maybe I should make this a bit smaller. So it's a bit, it's a bit sharper than here. You can see how it's bright here and then it's very dark here. Well, it's bright slowly and it's going. So it's the attenuation of your light, how the light is slowly fading, the intensity of your light is fading away. We can also change the color. So for example, we have a light that is very green, very yellow. And we say, okay. And then when you do a render, you see how the light becomes. I make this slightly bigger. You see how the light is a bit more colorful here. It's more in the yellowish, and yellow plus blue equals green. That's why we see it's all green here. So we can put back the white light. Okay, and then when you do a render, you go back to having your neutral colors. So these are the things we can do also. Now what you can do is we can, we've changed the, we've looked at changing the light properties by making sure that the shadows are on, yes. That making sure that we have use global settings, and we have, in this case, we use ray trace shadows. We also make sure that the that the shape area shadows is a rectangle, and we've done that, and we've left the rest as it is. And now what we're going to do is we're gonna render. So we click on F10, it's a more refined renderer. And what we do here is we're gonna change to a different renderer. So we're gonna use the Quicksilver, Mantle Ray. There's different renderer. In our case, we're gonna use, for example, the IRT, and you're gonna render. And this is how it looks. So there's a few problems here, but you can see that the rendering is much more accurate. There's even a reflection, which is much better. Then we're going to go back and we're going to increase the size of our file because it's a bit too small. So we're going to use HDTV, and we're going to use 1900, yeah, and you're going to render again, and it's a bit bigger picture, and you can see how it looks better. Then you can change and use different renderer, and you're going to render, and you can see how it's slightly different. So here again, the rendering technique, the renderer that you use, which is selected here, is which renderer you use will have an effect on how the screen of the scene looks like. So you have to make sure you try different ones. And here we have, in this version from Campus, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You try different ones, see the one that works for you, and that's the effect that you want to have. So now we've done that, we're going to try something different. We're going to go back to our light, and we're going to move the light slightly closer. So if we look at it from, it's slightly closer to the object. Okay, and we're going to render again, and we're going to see how. What's this? Oh, I think I rendered with the window. So I window for the with the light. Just a second. I rendered the view. Where is it? Window view. Yeah, render. And you see how now it's a bit more dramatic with the shadow coming out very clearly. So again, you have to look at what you want to achieve, and then you start playing around with the setting of your scene. So here again, if I move the light away and make sure it's, yeah, and then I do a quick render of the view. So you see how it becomes different. Of course, this is a quick rendering, and I do a proper rendering here, and you see how the light change and makes the atmosphere less dramatic. We're going to use again the which one you use? The art renderer. So we render this, and you can see how it looks different again. So you have to try different renderers to see what's going to happen to your light and what's going to happen to your effects. Another light that we're going to try is a spotlight. So we go back to creating objects, and this time we take standard, and here you have different one. You have target, spot, target, direct, omni, free spot, free direct. So we're going to use a target spot. So again, we create a spotlight in the scene, and we give it a target. So in our case, we're going to make sure the target is still again in the center of the cube. So we move that around to make sure it falls within the cube, the Rubik's cube that is, and that is. Now we know that our target light is in the cube. Now we move our target light to be closer to us and higher, and we turn off this one. So we can turn it off many ways, but one way you can do it is here by turning off. And now if we do a render of this view, so F10, and we render. So what have we got wrong? Is the light in the right place? Have I got the right in the, oh, hang on. Let me see if I have the right in the light in the right place. So it's here. Yeah. Oh, it doesn't support. Okay, we use the other one. Sorry, my mistake. So if we do F10 render, so it's okay. You get mistakes, you try again, and you render. And here you have, and you can see the nice limit here of the spotlight. So now what you can do, you can change the spotlight. You go to the modifier, and what you can do then is a few things. We make sure the shadows are on. So shadows parameters are on. So shadows are on. Yeah, they're on. We don't need to add that at the moment. What we need to do as well is go to the intensity color attenuation, and then what we can do is change few things. Since multiplier is 1, we're going to change that to slightly yellowish light. Okay, and what we're going to do as well is look at the atmosphere. Okay, we don't need to do anything there. Spotlight parameters, we can show the cone. So what you can do, a hotspot, you can make the hotspots much smaller, and you see how it changes on the screen. So we're going to put, for example, 20, and now we're going to see how the render changes. You see how it's better. So now we're going to make the bigger one also smaller, so the fall off will be, let's say, we're going to change that. Let's say you're going to make 20, we're going to make this one 10, and now we're going to render again, and now you have a nice effect. Now we can do something else. We can increase the follow to 30 to make it less sharp, and then we render, and here we are. And then you can go back to the previous slide. So go to selection, we put it on, and then we render, and this is what we get. So we start having different shadows, we start having our spotlight effect in a specific area, and we start having another effect for the other light. And what I would suggest you try is different settings, and try different lights and see what happens. And also, you know, changing the light direction. So for example, move the light around. If I move it around here and a bit higher, what will that give me? And I do a render. Okay, so it's an interesting view. So these are the things you need to do, and before you know it, you have a very interesting model. So we close all these rendering tools, and we make sure we save. So it's 5.1, we save it, and that's the end of this half of the tutorial, and you're going to start the next one in a minute. Thank you.